And I think the only thing you can control is setting the expectation up with your client, whether that may be in the lesson, that may be in the show, of having what's your personal goal for this horse show or for this lesson. And the other thing I tell my riders is everything happens in layers. So if you can just think about riding one rail, 1% better, and you do that all the way around the ring one time, that's 4% better if you do it one rail at a time. And if you can make each ride 1% better ride, there's just different ways that you can look at it, and giving yourself a little bit of grace, giving that rider grace, and being really realistic.
Welcome to the Stable Minded Podcast. We're your hosts, Gabby Greco and Bob Griffin. This podcast is brought to you in association with the Illinois American Saddlebred Pleasure Horse Association. Today, we talked to the judge of the Spring Iaspa Horse Show, Jolene Galvin-Yerkie. She is the instructor at Matthew Roberts Stables in Cave Creek, Arizona. Jolene has graciously agreed to be today's guest for the podcast. She shares her insightful perspective as an instructor and mentor in both the Morgan and Saddlebred communities. She talks about being a judge and the experiences she's had, a healthy work-life balance, the best practices as a riding instructor, and so much more.
This podcast is made possible in part by the generous support of Midwest Saddle Seat Equestrian Apparel. Check out their complete line of show and casual attire, including the beautiful show clothes from their Issued by Ellie Mae collection, as well as the exclusive Becker Brothers line. Whether you show saddle seat, hunt seat, Western, or Academy, Midwest Saddle Seat will ensure you are dressed your very best. And a special offer to all of our stable-minded listeners, Midwest Saddle Seat is offering 10% off your purchase when you enter the code STABLEMINDED at checkout. And now, today's show.
How did you get started in riding and end up in Arizona?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I was actually born into horses. My parents had horses, so I don't know a life without horses. That's my original start. Then from there, my parents got me into riding lessons. After about 2 years of riding with the instructor I started with, we moved, and then I started with Cindy Meunier. Okay, and I was with her from the age of 4 or 5 all the way through my adult life, and that was in Massachusetts. How I got to Arizona, I came out to visit my senior year of college. I went to the University of Massachusetts, came out here with some friends, loved the weather, and said, that's where I want to live. So a year later, I picked up, and after I graduated college, a year after that, I picked up and moved out to Arizona, and I've been here for 20 years.
Wow. And so how did you then go and start working professionally in horses?
Okay. Well, I grew up riding, like I said, with Cindy, doing equitation, saddle seat equitation and pleasure with the Morgans. And then from there, attended the University of Massachusetts and majored in equine management and sports management. Through there, I then had to do a internship. So Cindy, most students want to go back to the barns where they're comfortable, their knowledge, and go back and do their internship. But she connected me with John and Belle Hufford out in Indiana at Triumph Stables. And that's where I went, where I learned a whole basket of new information, how to show horses in hand, hunters, all kinds of great opportunities were led that direction. And then after that, I started working with Rodney Hicks and Ricky Harris, getting more of the saddlebred and Hackney pony experience there. So I had a lot of the Morgan background, gathered my saddlebred and Hackney abilities, information. And then when I decided to move to Arizona, I wanted a real job, a non-horse job, so I could be clean and wear makeup and dress nice and go to work. And after being out here for about 6 weeks, I was missing the horses. So I picked up a saddle horse report and looked in the back at what barns were in Arizona. And I looked at Matthew Roberts Stables, which is where I've been for 20 years, and saw he had a nice community there. He did have an instructor at the time, Marcia Everett. So I contacted them and came out with my resume and was able to give them a little bit of my background. And after meeting with them, they gave me an opportunity to observe lessons. And then at that point, I was able to start any new beginners that came. And I just built the business up from there, eventually taking over Marcia's position.
Interesting how, I don't know, like I have a college degree as well. I mean, I could do many different things, but I'm like, you know what? I think the horses, I mean, that's what I like to do. And teaching lessons, I didn't start right away, but kind of like worked my way into it like you did, sounds like. But I just think it's so interesting how you have all these dreams of going to college and getting this big corporate job. It doesn't work out for everyone, just not their path.
Yeah, it does. And I will admit, for anyone that's listening to this that is just getting started, I did hold a full-time corporate job position for a long time ago, up until just over 10 years ago. So I did the horses in the evenings. The weekends, I did lessons, kind of your typical lesson schedule, if you will. And then while holding a full-time job, that way I had insurance. I still was able to work in corporate America. I did work in real estate. So back in 2008, when everybody lost their job that was in real estate, I then from there changed over and became a paralegal. So that was the main job that I had once I left the residential career. And then said to the day I was laid off as a paralegal, I called Matthew leaving the parking garage and said, this just happened. I would like starting tomorrow to try to do lessons full time. And that's what I did and was able to build up the program to be a full-time instructor.
So then how long after you'd been working and doing riding lessons did you start judging?
I've been judging now for 15 years. So going backwards, growing up with those that don't know Cindy Meunier, she's been president of many associations. She's an active judge. She teaches judges school, very involved both in USCF, UPHA. And growing up with her, she got all of us involved in the Morgan youth contest. And there's a judging portion in that youth contest. And I just really enjoyed that aspect. We didn't have a ton of money to have a fancy horse. So riding, I always enjoyed it. I did not over excel at it. I had to work really hard at it. But in the youth contest, it's 4 phases. You give a speech on a given topic, you ride a horsemanship pattern, you get to judge, and you take an exam. And I just loved anything with horses. Schooling wasn't easy for me, but this was something I was interested in. I enjoyed doing. So I really studied the judge's manual and was able to study the aspects of what they're looking for in confirmation and performance classes. When I was 9 years old, I won the judging portion of one of the youth contests. And for winning that piece, I got to learner judge or be a guest judge, if you will, with Phil Price. And later on, as a professional, when I was lucky enough to judge the Morgan Grand National for the first time, he was one of the people on the panel. So that was really neat to see that kind of come all around. But that's where I was first exposed to the judging piece. And as I got older, I just thought, let me attend a judge's school. I want to be able to give back to the community. My path had looked different than most people, not being a horse trainer per se, never wanting to hang my own shingle up with my own name. I wanted to take my own path and be involved in the community in a different aspect. So I got my license 15 years ago with the Morgans. I have a large R in that now, and then really wanted to make sure I was comfortable and ready before pursuing the saddlebreds, the hackneys, and that I've had my card now with them for 3 years.
You said the first time that you judged Morgan Grand National. How many times have you judged at Morgan Grand National?
I've been lucky enough to judge 4 times. I've been on the equitation panel twice, and then I've done the hunters and the Western twice.
What is that like, judging a show on that scale? Because I've only judged like someone's little schooling show. I want to possibly do more and try to, get my judges cards eventually. But I mean, I've never been to Morgan Grand Nationals. I've been to Louisville, but it seems like it's a huge, huge thing.
It is. I think when you're a judge, period, you have to be organized, familiar with the specs. You have to have time management skills so that you're calling the gates. And being at that level, it's those basic skills that will carry you. The hunter classes and the Western can be huge with 2 splits and callbacks. And so you have to be on your A game, alert, and just taking care of yourself, good habits all week with your eating and your sleeping. But then going back to your basics, I think when you have so many years of judging, you start to figure out what works for you, organizing your cards, being true to yourself. Tell people when it's a big class, I'm not going to worry and obsess about getting every single number, for example. I might write down a small detail, whether it's their coat color or whatever it might be. And then after I walk the line up, I'll go back behind and grab their numbers, for example. You have to, like I said, figure out what works for you, and what works for one might not work for everybody. I organize my card. So many people don't know, judging a show where they place a 10, we have to pick 12 riders. So I do separate my card into quadrants, if you will. So I have 3 sets of 4 to help organize myself. And as the class is going through and maybe somebody has a mistake or picks up the wrong lead, again, I have space on my card to make those changes. So again, organization skills and being aware of how long you're calling the class, especially at those bigger shows where you have a decent amount of classes to get through and big sessions.
And how do you, like, I look at Morgan Grand National, like that's a marathon. And like, how do you just prep yourself for a week that I can't even imagine having to stand still?
I was going to say, it's got to be so mentally exhausting. I mean, just watching a session on a horse show, you're like, okay.
The local shows actually are more taxing. So I prepare myself the same way for a local show as a world championship horse show. I read over all the specs. I will read each horse show's, their prize list in the way that the management maybe has certain expectations of certain classes. Again, regardless of the show, that's how I'm going to prepare myself. I get all my clothes ready ahead of time. I have a judge's bag that I keep with my clipboard. I just make sure everything's always ready to go. So if you're treating each show the same, once you go, it's no different than what we do on the other side of it, whether you're a trainer or instructor. Just treat everything the same. And then that's where, again, healthy habits of eating, sleeping, preparing as you go into the show. I find the smaller shows, especially if you're the only judge, if there's consistently smaller classes, you don't have that time to sit down while someone's making their victory pass. You have to get your card organized, read over, especially if you're going from a saddlebred class to a hackney class to roadster, back to equitation. There's some Morgan classes mixed in there for the multi-breed shows that we're seeing more of. Just taking that time to be organized. And then from there, just taking some Advil and some Tylenol for your feet and making sure you have good footwear. And you do want to be able to give that respect to every exhibitor that's coming into that gate, whether they're the first class of the show or the last class of the show. It's important.
We will be right back to our show in just a moment. But first, I wanted to take a minute and ask you to go to our show page on whatever platform you're listening to it on and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. Second, if when you get to the end of this podcast, and I hope you do, would you please go to iaspa.com, that's IASPHA.com, become a member and maybe even become a sponsor. Our members are why we do this, and it's your support that makes projects like this podcast possible. Thank you so much. And now, back to our show.
I think we'll go ahead and pivot here just a little bit. But you talking about Cindy, and I've watched you get really involved with UPHA and the other organizations. Is that something that she has done a lot of work? I don't want to be wrong about this, but I thought with USEF and UPHA for sure, and I'm guessing AMHA. Is that something that has she been like a mentor to you, or is that just something that she modeled and you seem like you've gotten involved a lot in the same way that she has?
It's both. She definitely is still a mentor to me. Growing up at the barn, riding under her, I rode 3 days a week with her, but she lived 7 minutes from my house. So I would get dropped off during the day, during like summer vacation, for example. And she definitely doesn't have her barn as a daycare. You're welcome to come, which is the same model that I have today. You're welcome to come and be part of the barn, but you're going to work, you're going to learn. You can sit with me and learn how I'm giving lessons and what it is that I'm doing. She always gave you the keys to success. It's what you chose to do with them from there. I received a scholarship when I was in high school from UPHA towards my education. And that's what made me want to come back to UPHA and give back in any realm that I could. So I've been lucky enough to have Cindy in my life as a mentor, seeing what she's done both with committees, with judging, listening to her speak growing up as a child and seeing that and then wanting to strive to follow in a similar path. I did go to her, I would say around 10 years ago, and say, hey, I want to be more involved. I knew that would open up some doors for me. And I just said, I'm willing to volunteer in any capacity that that you might seem is a good fit. So she has opened up some of those connections. And then for myself, I enjoy the education aspect. I enjoy working with the youth. I enjoy teaching just adults about horsemanship, period. And that's what's gotten me involved in the committees that I'm in. So I am involved. I'm the vice president of the American Saddlebred Association of Arizona. I'm on the Arizona Morgan Horse Committee. I'm on the USCF Saddle Seat Equitation Committee. I'm involved in UPHA with the Ribbons of Service, and I think I'll be focusing this year in the promotions area. And then I'm also head of the youth for AMHA, and those are all volunteer positions. And I do enjoy giving my time to those, to those areas.
So in that vein, have you thought about how we as leaders that make up this horse show industry and its organizations, how can we better help these young trainers and instructors, and honestly, just anybody looking for an answer to a question that they might have? How can we better help each other?
So I think if we could start to build together a resource of people like myself or yourself, three of us on this call that are able to give those tips and not looking for a handout, not just charging for a service. I think there's, for instructors, I meant to touch on this too when you asked the question, there's some great opportunities that they did last year that I saw advertised. But I know when I was starting out, I didn't have the funds to pay to go to a conference. Even the UPHA conferences can be hard to do. I have to budget for them. And I'm lucky that Matthew has helped me with that expense as kind of a give back to me. But it's expensive to pay to go to the conference, the hotel, the travel arrangements, the food, while you're there. But we have to help these people. Can't always be paid. They need to be able to pick up the phone and ask. And it doesn't have to be, I think we get so stuck on the big picture. I need a website. I need a logo. That stuff all costs money. Let's just start off by doing things proper and building an environment where people feel, again, welcomed, service. I always tell people, think of your favorite restaurants that you go to, what you're willing to spend a little bit more money and how you're treated when you're there, and implement that into your business. That's just free, advice, but looking at what you're giving as a product and is the quality there.
So this probably leads us a little bit into the presentation that you did at UPHA. I think that was something, at least my understanding, I might be putting words in your mouth. Like, I met you through working for the HPT. And was that a result of some of the work? I know that you had put together one of the pieces for the UPHA toolbox, and I didn't know if that talk kind of came out of that. But I know a lot of people, I feel like they know you from having done that presentation at UPHA.
Yeah, so the presentation I did at UPHA 2 years ago now was regarding taking your business from good to great. And then I gave my experience as being an instructor. And I really honed in on my life changing during COVID. So I kind of gave a background of working at Matthew Robert Stables in the realm of being both an instructor, an assistant trainer, helping him on the administrative side. And then during COVID, everybody had an influx of lessons. We had this demand of people wanting to be outside and wanting to ride. So during that time, I shifted my schedule to be able to accommodate the demand that we had. But I also had a child that was in school who was all of a sudden now being homeschooled, and a younger child that daycare wasn't an option because, that was closed. And my husband as well was working from home now. So we had to really juggle everything. And I really focused on those lessons and shifted my focus and career to really listening to what the client wanted and servicing the client. So rather than focusing on having a certain number of lessons per week, focusing on the clients that I had and maybe getting them to ride a couple times. Well, they were they were asking, there was a demand to ride more times a week. We can be good at a lot of things. And I was a good horse trainer, but I had to, at that point, step back to just focus on giving good quality lessons and then meeting my clients where they were at. Some people just wanted to come and use that as their therapy time. Here we are in a horse show world. We want to kind of fit everybody into the same box of, okay, we're going to teach you about the horse. We're going to get you into academy, and then let's get you leasing and buying something. Well, all of a sudden I had people coming to me that were like, I'm here because I don't have to do those things. I don't have to commit to leasing something, but I do want to ride 3 times a week with you. And that's, for me, that was what changed my business. I started enjoying being at the barn even more and could give myself in this whole other area. That whole topic then brought everything this past year to giving a talk at the UPHA conference on work-life balance. And I, during that time, during COVID, had to, again, shift from our world of horses being 12, 13, 14-hour days to now I need to compact this a little bit, just like anyone else in the service industry that might be doing hair, nails, our dentist, doctor's appointments. You only have these options for times to come, and people conformed. And I know it's not forever. I tell people that too. Just meet where you're at right now. As my kids get older and they go off to, I have one that will be going to college in 3 years. I can probably take on some more evenings again. So it's just shifting and into your business.
Just listening to you talk about the work-life balance, I feel like it's hard, especially as a younger professional, you're like, okay, I gotta go all the time. Because you want to go out with your friends, but then I have all these lessons to do. And I've told Bob this, I'm really thankful to work for someone who's really great. And she's like, if you want to go take a Saturday off, like that's what you need to do. Sometimes I feel bad about it. Like, I'm like, oh, I should really be at the barn, but trying to reconcile that, like, okay, it's okay. Like, I need my life too. And wondering if you had ever like experienced any of that or like any of that, like just kind of feeling guilt a little bit about not being at the barn or not being there when stuff's going on.
For sure. I think you have to check in with yourself. So a question I gave at the conference this year before I even started speaking is, what do you want to be remembered for, both in your professional career, in your personal career? And are you on a path to make that happen? As far as my professional career, my husband has always discussed, look at everything as if it's money. So putting a number on everything that you're doing with your time, looking at your clients. Are you meeting your clients' needs? Are they feeling, when you're at work, focusing on solely what that task is at hand? So for myself, it's making sure the lesson horses are good and giving lessons. Those are primarily at Matthews my only task at this point. I'm not catching up on email. I'm not doing things on my phone. That's what my focus is. And when my clients walk in that door, my lessons are 30 minutes long. I want them to feel like they have my undivided attention. I'm here for them. We need them more than they need us, especially in the industry that we're in. It's a hobby. This is their pastime. This is, for some people, their vacation. This is their second home. This is their yacht, depending on what their investment is. And I treat everybody, that one lesson a week person, I have a person that rides with me 5 days a week. I treat everybody the same type of respect. So that's at work. And then when I am at home, carving out the time where I do check my emails, get back to clients, we do have to follow up with text messages and things of that nature. But then really when I'm with my children, for example, putting the phone away and trying to be as present as I possibly can, and setting those expectations up with your clients. When I meet clients and they say, oh, you only have 2 evenings. Yeah, I do, because I also have 2 children, and that I try to get to their sporting events and their school events as well. So I think the more honest we can be with ourselves and with our clients, the easier it can be. And then going back to your question of guilt, it can become hard, but I think you have to, I'm not really good at journaling, but if we can keep notes and go back and say, hey, you know what? Like for myself, the tack needs to get cleaned a little bit more, or I'm noticing my horses need their legs clipped, for example. I might keep up with the regular clipping once a week, but just going through, tails need to get washed. It's springtime. They're shedding their coats. So just going through and making sure that you're giving a quality product to those people coming in the door. And maybe this week looks a little bit different than next week, and give yourself that grace, and knowing that we can be flexible. And it's not like this forever, but definitely checking back in with yourself with those expectations. That for me helps keep a balance.
Kind of coming off of that a little bit, like you've talked about like how you've changed the way, like you stepped away from being an assistant and focused on riding lessons. And in an industry where, I don't know, everybody seems like success is either getting to the Morgan Grand National or getting to Louisville or having a kid in the top 10 in the finals at Kansas City. You sound like you're very comfortable with the choices that you've made. And to me, it sounds like you have really defined success for yourself. I was just wondering if that's true, or how you kind of came to feeling like that, or if that is how you feel.
It's 100% how I feel. It's not how I would have felt in my 20s or 30s, even in the beginning of my 30s, for sure. Think in the beginning, I had aspirations of being someone like Lillian Shively or any of the great instructors that are out there today. Wanting credit, wanting to be, as that horse is making that victory pass at whatever horse show, you're out there front and center so everyone knows that's my rider. With my career pivoting a little bit to just focusing on the lessons, we have a large Arabian horse population out in Arizona, and I have built a career now where the local Arabian barns now contact me and send their riders to me for equitation, for horsemanship, and I work with numerous barns that compete against one another, but their riders come to me for those skills. So I think you have to be willing to look at your success, build your success, and then let your success work for itself. And that work will, people know, I don't need to be in lights. But again, as a 20-year-old, you want to prove yourself. You want to be a part of things. You want to be out there for that victory pass. And it doesn't matter anymore. You have to let it go, and then know that you'll get that credit at the right, at the right time. So
this is a weird question, but what is that secret to, like, I struggle with that. I have a friend that I talk to, and I'll be talking about how I'm less successful because I'm not having a show season like I had a couple years ago. And he's like, but he's asked me these questions about business. Like, he's like, but you own a barn and you're paying your bills and you have the business is staying afloat. And he's like he calls that success. He doesn't quite understand where I'm define my success by how many blue ribbons I have hanging up on the banner at the end of a horse show. And he doesn't understand that. I think like most people out in the world are just making sure like a business is staying afloat and how hard it is to even just do that. And I feel like you have something really figured out that I'm struggle to kind of keep figuring out for myself.
You have to look at your clients, your everyday clients, your bread and butter, if you will, and are they happy? That has to start number one. And then are you sustaining enough? For me, it's the students. For you, it's the horses. Are you sustaining and filling up those stalls? I do have a certain goal that I try to keep per day. Does that happen every day? No, you have weather, you have people that get sick, you have other events that you have to travel for. Not giving up and letting know that might just be a hiccup in the road. Definitely for me, for my level of success, you have to put down the just winning and look at what did I do to prepare? Where are we at today? When that rider leaves the arena, just like we would as horsemen, look back and say, okay, are there improvements that can be made? Could that ride been different? Could those departures or transitions been different? Could the headset have been different? And if we can say yes to at least one of those questions, then we have something that will to go back and work on next week. Once we start saying no, I've checked every box. That's when, as a horse trainer, then we need to be honest of what the level of horse that we have, and having that discussion with our clients. We have to be honest. We have to be able to answer those questions. And as long as there's something that you can go back and improve on, then you're doing okay. And it's just like we tell our riders going into the ring, we can't control what the judge is going to do, but what we can control is that did we prepare? Is your horse turned out well? Is your suit fitting correctly? Did you come and put the time into the saddle? Those are the things that we can control. The sport we do is somewhat subjective. So there's going to be times, and even as a judge, that's the hardest part for me. There's some classes still to this day that stay with me where it's like, oh, it came down to two horses or two riders, and I've handed my card in, and I still think about them to this day. I don't know if that kind of answers the question, but we can't hang everything up on just those blue ribbons. We also need to set our expectations up to our clients to that aspect of that.
I think that Oh, that's a really great point, because we have a few kids that have moved up out of academy, have purchased their own first show horse, and we keep reminding them that this is a journey. Your first show in a suit is probably not going to be great. And if it is great, that's like the cherry on top. But I mean, I have a girl she just bought her first horse, and it's a little bit of a struggle sometimes. We have to keep telling her it's a journey. And then you're going to look at this down the road in a few months and be like, oh my gosh, why was I so upset? But you can be upset in the moment, but I mean, you're looking back, you're like, look how far I've come. And it's not just about winning all the time, which I think is hard for some people because they get really pigeonholed into, I got to win all the time. I bought this really nice, expensive horse. I got to win. And then I just feel like it takes the fun out of it. And then you're not challenging yourself or learning anything when it just becomes all about winning.
I think the only thing you can control is setting the expectation up with your client, whether that may be in the lesson, that may be in the show, of having what's your personal goal for this horse show or for this lesson. And the other thing I tell my riders is everything happens in layers. So if you can just think about riding one rail 1% better, and you do that all the way around the ring, one time if you count the short ends, our arena at home is a square. That's 4% better if you do it one rail at a time. And if you can make each ride 1% better ride, there's just different ways that you can look at it, and giving yourself a little bit of grace, giving that rider grace and being really realistic. I think what you just mentioned about taking riders from academy to full suit, it takes a good 1 to 2 years to mesh and really be able to know and build that confidence with that horse. We definitely are all competitive. I think it's easy for us to say it's not all about the blue ribbon, but we all do want to be successful. I think too, we can't look back at where we were a decade ago or 2 decades ago. I think we have to be realistic to where we're at right now, who our clients are, and giving us, given that helps too with a realistic expectation.
I don't know if you've formally thought about it or if it's just something that's kind of coming out of who you are and how you do things, but that it sounds like you're giving lessons in a way that helps somebody look at their personal trek through riding, and that is there some longevity in that? Like, I had this discussion with Gabby before too, that it's just, we have clients that have stayed with us for so long, and I don't know what I'm doing right to help them, but through the ups and the downs of it, it's somehow, I think they're in it for their own. They've had a nicer horse, they had less nice horse. For a while they didn't have a horse, but they're staying in it for I guess for a lifetime, and that they're staying in it for a different reason. I feel like that chasing that blue ribbon all the time has if you can't get it, or you had it for a while and then you don't have it, that some people kind of lose the drive to keep going. And to me, it sounds like you're trying to build in something that is a little beyond that blue ribbon.
Yeah. So if it helps, what I base my riding off of course, we want everybody to have fun and to be safe, but I really structure my riding on the how and why. So again, going backwards, this was not easy for me. I loved riding. It was not easy for me. Seeing diagonals was not easy for me. So now I have a whole different, having gone through that, I have a whole different way of teaching someone their diagonals, for example. So I really try to give the how and the why on the position. Equitation, for example, there's a proper way to sit in the saddle, whether you're riding hunt seat, saddle seat, or Western, because it goes back to the form of the horse. And with the horsemanship is all about balancing that horse to get the most out of the horse, and while you're trying to navigate around the arena. So that for me is really the science of the horsemanship, whether you're taking your first lesson, you're coming to me and you show horses. I have a lot, given that we live in Arizona, we get a lot of people that come out here seasonally, and their trainers will have them contact me to stay legged up while they're out here. That can be too a little bit of a challenge, because they're like, oh, I've been told for X amount of years to ride this way. Well, here's some more tools for your toolbox. And then teaching riders to really listen to the horse. We communicate by speaking. Horses can't communicate that way. So maybe the horse hanging in your reins or jerking its head forward. How about we check the grip of your hands? How about we check how you're positioning yourself? Oh, you're really shortening the reins by going to the horse. You're not bringing that horse to us. And I think people don't want to feel stupid when you're teaching them. So you have to do things in a very layered, easy way. They're spending a lot of money to do this. That's the piece that we have to keep remembering and making sure we're kind with our words, but yet we're direct. We're teaching them. So that's, for me, regardless of what you're coming to me for, is how I'm going to teach my lessons. Does that work for everybody? No. I've had one example would be a parent that used to ride, not in structured lessons, kind of through the fields and doing the trail rides, and now they want their child to ride. Well, things are different than they were 20 plus years ago. We wear helmets. I didn't grow up wearing a helmet in my lessons. And if I did, it was a decorative helmet with a little elastic strap. So now I face a whole nother challenge of parents who want a safe environment, as do I, but they also want this child progressing. Well, why isn't my daughter cantering yet? Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but your daughter can't even trot around the arena both directions and be able to navigate. So you have to be able, for me as an instructor too, being able to approach that and it's okay. I'm not going to get along with everybody. Not everyone. I have a very slow method that I use. And the other piece of it is you're only as good as the lesson horses that you have. So that's the other account into everything.
And I know we're getting close to running out of time here, so I also wanted to talk about a little bit, like, we keep talking about trying to grow the industry. I feel like you have a little different perspective on it, maybe at least than I do. And how do we get more instructors into it? And I've been talking to some people lately about what growth looks like in this industry. Like we all keep saying that we want more people in it and we want more horses, but does that mean you give more lessons, or do we need to get more people giving lessons? And how do we better promote this to the public?
I think we need to start at the bottom. And I think we need, like I just mentioned, your lesson is only as good as the lesson horses that you have. So you could take someone that's mediocre at giving a lesson that maybe not everybody appreciates the way that they speak to the student, but if they have a really great lesson horse, we've all been on a horse that makes us feel like a really good rider, a good trainer. And you're like, I got this. This is fun. So if you can have that horse in your program, but we know these horses, unfortunately, only come into our life for a certain period of time. What I would like to see across the industry as a whole is people looking at their retired show horse, if you will, and educating themselves on the great lesson programs that are out there. And these are our ambassadors. These are our ambassadors to the next step. Out here on the West Coast, the academy is not as huge as it is in the Midwest or East Coast. We really try to take our lesson students, those that are interested in showing. We'll do like little barn shows. We don't do the tournaments like they do most places, but we'll do little barn shows within the barn, and then educating the people on what academy is, and then trying to go that next step. Having said that, servicing all the people that I've serviced, of meeting their needs, it has affected my academy program because people have really found the joy of taking many lessons per week. But now that changes things financially for being able to go to a horse show. So I think just like in our work-life balance, I have to go back and just restructure things as needed so that I don't become obsolete in certain areas. That said, I think instructors need to understand too fully what their role is. Again, going back for what's been my key to success is the how and the why, not just taking patterns from a pattern book, but really understanding. And I think being a judge too helps. But again, also riding with the right instructor help. When we do the good hands pattern, for example, sure, to the average person, it's just a figure eight. But there's so much more than that figure eight, that two circles. We're counting our strides. A lot of instructors don't know that. We're turning them around that inside leg. We're thinking ahead before we ask for that halt. We're thinking about how that horse is going to pick up the next lead and continuing on from there. So I think educating more instructors. And I think people, again, going back to my 20-year-old self, people are trying to prove themselves. So it's hard, and I think it's easier for people to try to go the route of doing everything. I want to be a trainer. I want to be seen showing the horse. I also want to be an instructor. And hopefully maybe somebody listening to this or having heard myself speak at the conference, understanding it's okay just to do one thing. You can be successful. You can be great at one thing. You can't be great at a lot of things. And then I use the example as I don't ski, but a lot of people go skiing. And then you look at how many people in that industry are competitive skiers versus the casual skier. So, and the last thing I'll say on that is, as horse people, we need to be more open on what our pricing is. So having a sheet out of what our lesson prices are, what our academy prices are, what shows are we going to, and what those estimated costs are going to be. Where I think we're a little too afraid in this industry to put numbers out there because we might hear no. But the reality is, if we give those numbers, it gives time for those adults to figure out how can I make those numbers work, maybe by talking to a grandparent or saving and skipping a family vacation.
It blows my mind because we, like Sarah and I, our lesson program, beginning of the year, we already have our horse shows all set where we're going to go. We actually just changed our program to monthly tuition. So a lot of our show riders will ride at least, our academy show riders will ride at least a private and a group a week. And that's monthly. They pay that and then they enroll in their shows that they want to do. So if they pick 6 shows, that's all built in through their monthly payments. And it really helps people like figure out and budget. Okay, if I do these 4 shows and that's my monthly on top of my group and my private a week, I can budget and get this paid per month rather than the horse show just coming along and you getting a bill for it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was going to be this much. But I think they're really transparent about everything what everything costs. And you're right. Like people are afraid to hear the word no and like, oh, I can't afford that. You have to, I mean, okay, you might not be able to afford this show, but maybe there's another show that's a better option for you. Or we have barn shows that you can show in. Or if you just want to do a weekly group lesson, that's great too. Like that's, if you want to be out at the barn and help us out, like that's awesome. And yeah,
I agree with that. And I think educating the people where that money goes to. So I think that's a better area where a lot of instructors can do is in the beginning, okay, here we're going to go to this academy show. It's going to cost this, but I think we need to go down further and explain where does that money going? There are fees that go along with that. That covers your entry for the classes. There's a stall. There's shavings that we have to get. There's my time because I'm not doing lessons. There's the hauling that goes with it. Oh, they have to have a Coggins. Just educating these people. And I think people appreciate that where they can see where their dollar's going.
Yep, absolutely. And then I had a talk with 2 new parents, with the show horses, and I had to explain, okay, now you have to take a check or pay a credit card fee to the show for your stall, your shavings, your classes, as different in an academy where we paid it and it was just going on your bill. But now this is like because this is your horse, this is your bill to pay to the show. And this goes to all the show fees and what they have to cover, facility, all that good stuff. And they really appreciate it. They're like, oh, I didn't understand where that money went to. But yeah,
I think educating them, like you just said, all the way through. So I'm just going to use the number 500. $500 might seem like a lot to go to a show to show one day. But once they know these performance riders, if you will, they're, like you just said, they're cutting a check to the barn and they're cutting a check to the horse show. But that helps let them know what is in their future. It also makes $500 like a really good deal.
I've got one more question or just one piece. I'm hearing something, and I don't know if you want to speak to it a little bit. In that same vein of where we're talking about, like as a trainer and instructor, we're all kind of shooting for Louisville, that maybe we put some of that on riders as well. And it sounds like you have some clients who are just doing this for enjoyment. But that's still a really good client for you. They're showing up several times a week. And I guess how we're defining what a good client was somebody who was going to buy the, $1 million horse and go win at Louisville versus a really good client who just keeps showing up and being here and riding every week is also a good client and gives me a successful business.
Absolutely. Again, for my business, I only get paid by that person showing up and taking the lesson. So it's been more of a reward for me having the client that wants to ride every day of the week that's retired or 3 days a week and knowing I can continue to count on that income growing up. Jealous of the riders that had the beautiful show horses and were very successful in the equitation world. And I usually was leasing a horse most of my life and maybe had something to show at the show coming up and maybe I didn't. But I look at where I am today. Here I am talking with you guys. I'm still in it and have found different capacities to be in it. So again, going back to COVID, that's again where I pivoted my my program, and knowing that that was more of a financial security for me. The junior exhibitors are so much fun to teach. They're the ones that I get to see my name listed as the instructor. It's great in that type of success, but I also know I start to see less of them that high school career or high school time when they start to have other activities. And then I've watched many of my students graduate from high school and also graduate from the horse program and be done. So I think it's important very much, Bob, like the client you were talking about earlier, that's been with you for so long, that I would assume is an adult client. So it's meeting them where they're at. And around the time that we were on Rainmaker together, and I put that article together for UPHA, I got it. I asked one of my riders to just give a quick quote of why she rides with me, so I could include that in the article. And it was, she felt heard. She felt like she was getting her wants, her needs met, and that I would continue to push her as comfortable as I could make her be. So the lessons weren't getting stagnant. She's always learning something new. There's accountability, but I'm meeting her where she's at each day. And she is someone that will ride with me 2 to 3 times a week. And these people live close by, and they'll come, and they've asked, can we come visit the horses on the days that we're not having lessons? So you really need to have that community. For me, it's that community feel. Yes, all are welcome. You're going to be treated, the same here. We appreciate you having that community together. And even at horse shows, when I'm there coaching some of my students that are show clients, I invite these other people to come and sit with me, and we'll watch the classes together. That community feel, making everybody feel a part of everything, no matter what their goal is. Same thing with the group lessons. That's where we do a lot of our team building.
I just think it's interesting as like a woman instructor trainer. Like, you have kids. My boss had one daughter. I mean, how did you reconcile figuring out, okay, you're pregnant, I'm going to have this baby. Okay, what am I going to do in my job? Because I'm just thinking, I'm 30 years old. I don't know if I want to have kids, not to get like too into whatever. I don't know if I want to have kids, but I mean, I'm always thinking like, well, that's 1 year, almost 1 year of my life that I might not be able to ride, or I'm going to be super, super busy. Just how you, did you plan that out? Did you have any, I don't want to say regrets, but maybe oh gosh, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? But yeah.
So when I met my husband, he already had a son who was 3 years old at the time. So right away, my life changed. There was already a child in my life from the very beginning. So I was able to have that transition. Of course, being 3, he was somewhat sufficient on his own. And then when I got pregnant with our second child, for me, it's my work ethic. I literally was still working on the day that I was due. So I never stopped. I never slowed down. The only advice that I was given, if I wasn't riding much prior, don't start riding even more. So for me, I did not ride horses once I knew that I was pregnant. And then from there, one of the pieces of advice that I was given is, if someone offers to help, take them up on it. I think we feel like especially horse people, we have to prove ourselves, and we can figure it out on our own. But again, going back to just giving yourself that grace, giving yourself that time. I did go back to working 9 days after having my child. It definitely was too soon. So as far as asking about anything that I would change, probably a little bit of that aspect. And then my only other regret is I don't have a picture with me sitting on the horse with my youngest. I had one with my oldest, but we always put him on the horse. But it's again, giving yourself that time and knowing that this time of my life is only like this right now. By 3 years old, the youngest was in preschool, and preschool was as long as the day if you wanted to make it. And he's now in first grade and is thriving. So they don't need us as much as we think they need us. And it's important to have that balance and still have your career and have that mental time to still, be an adult and be around other adults, just like we all had, we're going through COVID. I think we were all lucky to be in an industry where we weren't cooped up in the house. Mm-hmm. We still have that mental, that time. But that, like I said, don't go too far ahead of pre-planning and thinking it's going to handicap you. We find to make it all work.
Yeah. And now the final 5. Our favorite 5 questions we ask all of our favorite stable-minded people.
First, if you were not showing horses, what would you be doing?
My background is sports management, so I'd be working somewhere in the sports industry. Now, a lot of people know, a little fun fact, I did in-house marketing for the New England Patriots. So I did do that. And then as an intern back in college, I assisted with the football operations. So probably something within the sports field.
Well, I'm always surprised when I don't know about people. Like I said, we've talked for 50 some odd weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's cool. To some degree, we all have a horse addiction. What do you think is at the root of yours?
Not knowing a world without horses, I think it's what you know. I was born into it, and here I am. And then being blessed enough to have someone like Cindy Meunier as my instructor. I think if you have a bad experience in anything, you're going to get out of that industry. But I was lucky enough to have a great mentor and try to emulate everything she's done.
Big picture, what is the greatest gift that your involvement in horses has given you?
I think getting to be a mentor, especially where I'm at now in life. I'm getting to work with adult or young adults and getting to be a mentor for them and seeing them start to pursue their journey. So again, it's been great having Cindy as a mentor, but now it's kind of cool to see myself being a mentor to other people that have been following me.
What is the biggest risk you've taken and how did it pay off?
There's 2. Moving to Arizona, I think packing up all your stuff at 24 and moving from Massachusetts to across the country to Arizona, that itself was a risk, which put me to meeting Matthew and then taking on that full-time career when my life had changed to being a full-time instructor, saying, all right, I'm going to buckle up and I'm going to do this and I'm going to work as many days as I need to and see where that takes me. And the worst that can happen is I have to go get a full-time job back in an office somewhere.
And lastly, what is something that you're currently excited about?
I'm currently trying to work on building more of a horsemanship program at the barn. So this would be students coming in any capacity where I'm not necessarily promoting lessons, but I'm promoting a hands-on horsemanship program where they're learning, parts of the horse, barn safety, how we run a barn with vaccines or the dentist or all of that capacity. And then there's a huge I do a lot of teaching to homeschool students, horseback riding, but I would like to pursue more, again, the horsemanship area with the homeschool students.
And so as we wrap this up, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. And we will be seeing you soon. That's it for today's show. We want to thank Jolene for spending so much time with us and letting us get to know her better. And now, put down your phone and pick up the reins. And we'll see you back here next time.